since lockdown has finished and the country has opened up again, there has been anti-immigrant protests. There have been protests at accommodation centres. There have been protests at libraries because of speculation about sexualised material. All of it based on nothing.
Thank you very much for joining us. I just wonder what you had managed to establish as fact about the cause of the stabbing attack and the riot that followed.
Well, that's still not clear as to the motivation of the individual involved. But the rumour mill after the event, which was quite traumatic for everybody here in Dublin, children lining up to go from their primary school to an after school being attacked with a knife, is something that is every parent's worst nightmare. So there was a level of shock that went through the city as soon as that was heard. But then the rumour mill started as to the ethnicity of this individual. There has been a bubbling up of tension, of anti-immigrant sentiments over the last period of time in Ireland. It's not something we're used to. We've never had immigration as an election issue in Ireland. There's no mainstream party ever plays the immigration card, ever plays the race card. So it's not something that really we are accustomed to in Ireland, probably because of our own history, because of the nature of Irish immigration, where we are all over the world. So our own political discourse has never been focused on the issue of immigration.
So it's a very worrying development. And it seems to have been fueled by sort of, as you say, misinformation, rumour, speculation on social media. How has that kind of environment sort of collided with the threat from the far right?
Well, since COVID lockdown, there's been a huge amount of conspiracy theorists who have gathered a level of support online. I think the social media companies have not done enough, many of which are based in Dublin. They've allowed these platforms to spread hate, massive amount of misinformation. And since lockdown has finished and the country has opened up again, there has been anti-immigrant protests. There have been protests at accommodation centres. There have been protests at libraries because of speculation about sexualised material. All of it based on nothing. There's been protests at a place just around the corner from Leinster House, the Irish Parliament, where a number of asylum seekers were living in tents, and some of those tents were set alight. And there was a protest, a very violent one, at the opening of the Dáil there in September, the reopening of the Parliament for the new session, which led to quite ugly scenes outside. So it's been bubbling up for quite a while, and I would be very critical of some political figures within Leinster House, within the Oireachtas, within our Parliament, who've been stoking this up, who can't help themselves but put the word immigrant and criminal in the same sentence as often as they possibly can. And then you have some...
Who are you talking about there?
I'm talking about there's members of what will call themselves the Rural Independents. There's a number of members of the Irish Seanad who, in their online content are very clever in stoking up certain levels of emotions. They don't go far enough for it to be, if you like, in the criminal space, but they certainly do enough to stoke up tensions, and that is deeply regrettable.
Well, Aodhán, you also mentioned social media companies, in your view, not having done enough to target some of this, misinformation, fake news, conspiracy theories, and also hatred online. You've said many are based in Dublin. So what sanctions would you like to see applied to ensure that they take their responsibilities seriously?
Well, they have never taken their responsibility seriously. Never. And it is completely exasperating for people like myself or people across the political spectrum in Ireland who are trying to encourage them, almost force them to change their methodologies, because they are allowing hate speech to go unchallenged on their own platforms. There are far right groups who are communicating on these platforms, who organised last night's riot, who will organise again if there isn't a recognition that they are making money out of far-right extremism and misinformation. And it is very difficult for us in politics to keep up because we're always on the back foot when it comes to the type of misinformation that's being spread. So between that, the bubbling up of tensions, the irresponsible behaviour of certain politicians, but also we have a crisis within our own police force in Ireland. And Orna, there's been a lot of controversy recently about falling numbers of resignations,
Well,
morale
and let me come
issues.
back to the piece. I just want to just push you a bit more on this social media point because, do you think the social media companies should they be threatened with new regulation? Should there be, new
Absolutely. Have a new,
taxation? Yeah.
we do have a new data commissioner who is a new appointment to Ireland. But I always feel because many of these companies are based in Ireland, they have sweetheart deals with the Irish exchequer. They don't necessarily pay as much corporation tax as might be expected. We're happy to have them here. That there isn't often as much of a regulatory sort of a push on them as there could be.
Yeah. So
And
take action or lose your sweetheart status is the
well, I
message
mean,
from you.
I think what they are doing, the damage that they are doing to young people's mental health, the facilitating that they are involved in terms of far right activism, the hate speech that is going uncensored, all of that is something that is deeply, deeply worrying, and I think is something that has to be challenged.
Right. And just finally, you mentioned the police there. I mean, there's some criticism really that they fell short in their ability to both anticipate the violence and also deal with it promptly. I noticed the police service of Northern Ireland has dispatched 2 water cannon after a request from Dublin. What are your thoughts on where the police have fallen short and what should be done there?
Well, it's deeply disturbing that these scenes that are unknown to us in Dublin are now being shown all over the world, of buses on fire, of Gardaí being assaulted, of looting. That is not us. That is not Dublin. That is not what we are used to. And the idea that the PSNI are lending water cannon is something that really, really distresses me. The Gardaí are involved in a long-term controversy over numbers, over resources, over morale. We've had more resignations from the force this year than we have ever in the past. There are issues around pay and conditions, and it's something that the government are going to have to grapple with. I think the Minister for Justice is going to have to come in front of the Dáil next week and explain as to how we've come to a situation where 2 things have happened, a perfect storm, if you will, of this far-right activism going unchecked, and then asking a beleaguered police force to do something about it. And
Right.
those 2 things add to what happened last night.